Well, the thing is that I was actually born loving animals. My mother tells me that, even when I was 1.5, I was intently studying earthworms. And luckily, I had a very supportive mother. Back then, when I was growing up, television hadn't been invented. So I learned by being out in nature and from books. Books were very important. And it was when I was 10 years old, I found this little secondhand book. We had very little money. It was World War II. Anyway, it was called Tarzan of the Apes. And of course, I fell in love with that passionately in love with that glorious Lord of the Jungle. I was very jealous because he married the wrong Jane. Of course, I knew Tarzan didn't exist, but that's what started my dream. I'm going to grow up, go to Africa, live with wild animals, and write books about them. No thought of being a scientist. Girls didn't have those aspirations back then. And everybody laughed at me. How would you get there? Don't have money. You're just a girl. Except Mum. And she said, if you really want to do something like this, you're going to have to work really hard, take advantage of every opportunity. And if you don't give up, maybe you find a way. So that was the support I had. And eventually the opportunity came, an invitation from a school friend to have a holiday in Kenya. That's where I met the late Dr. Louis Leakey. And amazingly, he gave me this opportunity to go and study not just any animal, but the one most like us.
What would you highlight as some of the biggest learnings?
Well, it was David Greybeard, a very handsome male. For some reason, was less afraid than the others. And gradually, I could get closer and closer to him. And then, in a way, he helped me to meet the others in the community, because if he was part of a group, the others ready to run, but David would be sitting there. And so I suppose they thought, well, she can't be so dangerous after all. And the big breakthrough was when I saw him using and making tools to fish for termites. Because at that time, science thought humans and only humans used and made tools. In fact, it was very reductionist thinking back then, which I didn't know about when I went to Gombe. I knew nothing about science. And yet when I was sent to Cambridge after 2 years with the chimps by Leakey, because he told me I had to get a degree and there was no time for a BA, so I went for a PhD. And I was told, you can't talk about chimpanzee personality, mind, or emotion, because those are unique to us. But I'd learned from my childhood teacher that that was not true. And that childhood teacher was my dog, Rusty.
I'd imagine you've also learned a lot from the chimpanzees. What would you say that they've taught you?
Well, they've taught many people that animals are way more intelligent than we used to think. But they didn't teach me that because I knew it already, all my childhood. But I think the most important thing I learned from them was that, like us, they are, but we're different. And so you can stand back from this closest living relative and say, well, what's the main difference? And the main difference is the fact that we have developed this extraordinarily sophisticated intellect. And although animals are way more intelligent than people used to think, they can't compete with somebody who designs a rocket to go up to Mars with a robot to take photographs. And this is what's so strange and bizarre, that the most intellectual creature ever to walk this planet is destroying its only home, fast and faster.
How do you suggest people begin if they're coming from a place of sort of concern and desolation? How do we begin the journey to hope? What kind of actions, can we take?
Okay, well, I think a major problem is people are told, think globally, act locally. But if you think globally, you do get depressed. I mean, we're bombarded every single day in the press, in the media of all sorts, about all the things going wrong. And we need to know that, absolutely. But as I've been traveling around, I meet so many amazing people doing amazing things, and places we destroyed, once again, nature can come back if we give it time. And so what do I say to people? Don't think globally first, think locally. Think, what can I do here? maybe I can get together with a group of friends and clear the street of litter, or we can get together and put recycling bins in the school, or we can insist on buying organic food. Does it cost a bit more? Yes, but then you value it more and you waste less, because waste is a huge problem. But anyway, whatever you decide to do, it could be writing letters to legislators, it could be anything. Then you find that you do make a difference. And that gives you hope. And that encourages you to make a bigger difference. And hope is contagious. So by doing that, you're inspiring more people to take action.
How do you see the future of the Institute, and what projects are you most proud of?
Well, we've now got, it's either 24 or 34, I keep meaning to find out, Jane Goodall Institutes in, let's say for the moment, 24 countries. And even during the pandemic, while I've been here, grounded as I call it, we've started a new institute in India, which is fantastic, and another one in Turkey, and close to founding one in Israel. We've got new Roots and Shoots groups popping up all over the place. And so the future, well, I always say, if you aim for the stars, you might reach the moon. If you aim for the moon, you might get to the top of Everest. So I like aiming for the stars. I aim to create a critical mass of young people who understand that we all need some money to live. It's when we live for money that it starts going wrong. Unless we're living for money to help make the world a better place, in which case it's wonderful.
Are there just a couple examples that you would highlight of projects or people, along the way with your journey, either through the Institute or through Roots and Shoots, that stay with you as being especially inspiring?
Oh gosh, there's so many. How do I pick? I mean, I'll tell you a very symbolic story from Roots and Shoots. And that was the first group to start in the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC, where there's all that fighting because it's mineral rich, where we are in Goma, it's on the east. And so this first group of children, they were about 10 to 12, and they'd learned at school about a hill. They could see it, but quite far, further than they thought, which had been a sacred hill covered in trees, and now the trees had gone. So they wanted to put the trees back. Well, their mentor thought, well, they can't do that, but he didn't want to squash their enthusiasm. So he got a forester to donate some saplings. Then he had to go to the colonel of the militia that was in the area at the time. It keeps changing, there's fighting going on. And this man said, well, it's a stupid idea, but I suppose there's no harm in it, but I'm going to have to send soldiers with you. So now you imagine there's 15 little children clutching their little saplings, and I suppose a shovel or something, and 4 great big Congolese soldiers with AK-47 over their shoulder. And they get to the hill and they're tired and the ground is hard, but they start trying to plant their tree, and a little girl starts to cry. Within 10 minutes, one of the soldiers leaned his gun on a tree and went to help her. And within the next 15 minutes, all the soldiers had laid aside their guns and were helping the children plant trees. And this to me is so symbolic. Well, I don't think I know what rest is. And I'm honestly, since the pandemic began, I haven't had one single day without at least one interview or Zoom or video message.
Wow.
And usually there's 3 or 4. And when I say one single day, some people say, have a nice weekend. And I say, well, the week doesn't end. And I think I've always had that attitude, because people would say to me when I was at Gombe climbing up into the hills every single day, well, what about weekends? And I said, well, chimps don't have weekends, so I can't have weekends either, So rest, well, okay, every lunchtime, I sit under my favorite tree that I climbed as a child. It's out there, beech tree. And I'm visited by a robin and a blackbird. And sometimes we sing to each other. I sing a little bit and they sing. Not always, but sometimes. And then in the evening, I go for like 30 minutes walking around the cliff. Those are my rest. I think it depends who we are. I mean, we all have to choose to change in a way that we can cope with. Yeah. And for some people, some people can make huge changes because they're very wealthy. They can write checks. They can do all these different things. But everybody can do something. Everybody can do something. Everybody can remember to turn out lights, can walk or cycle or take public transport. All these little things that we can think of doing. And we just have to choose. You can't dictate to people. They have to want to make change. And then think about what I can do to make change. I will do it. And lots of young people are changing their parents and their grandparents. Oh, yes. I talked to a CEO the other day of a big company in Singapore, and he said, Jane, our company is now moving very rapidly towards becoming, zero emissions and thinking about our supply chain and trying to be ethical. He said for 3 reasons. 1, we've seen the writing on the wall that we can't go on exploiting nature the way we are. It's the end of our business if we do. 2, consumer pressure. We can't go on making things if people won't buy them. And 3, but he said, it was my 12-year-old daughter. And she came home from school one day and she said, Daddy, what you're doing, is it hurting the environment? Because if you're hurting the environment, I've got to grow up in that environment. And he said, that got to the heart. And that's what we have to do. We have to get to people's hearts because people have to change from within.
Dr. Jane Goodall, it has been such a pleasure having you here with us. Thank you for participating in our second Global I Am Remarkable Week. And thank you for all of your work, such a life of service.
Well, thank you. And thank you for inviting me onto your show and for a lovely conversation.